Hi, I'm Roger Narayan and you are watching Cinema Rendezvous. I guess in a more meta way, I guess I'm more of a romantic for good story. I think as we all are, in storytelling. So anything that's a good story that can take you on a journey, that can make you question things, or maybe just even enjoy it, or change your perspective about something even slightly, I love to be part of. So Hola Venky happened that way. Sandeep was in Bombay, I was in Los Angeles at the time. He had emailed me the script and said, hey, I've seen your other work, I'd love you to take a look at this. And I read it and I was like, Hola Venky, it sounds Mexican, it sounds Indian. It's like, okay, that sounds interesting, so let me check it out. So Hola Venky with an exclamation mark was like, it kind of like got my attention. I was like, what the heck is this? So I read it and it's like this very, very interesting sociological take. It was a great commentary on the status quo of like love and marriage and the sociology around institutions and what is right and wrong and the grays, the shades of gray there. Venky, I play this techie who is washed out after a failed marriage, who was divorced and who is on the brink of meeting somebody new who's also divorced in Bombay, and gets volunteered on an assignment to go do a training program in the United States, and ends up meeting this Mexican girl. And kind of odd people to fall in love, but they do, and that's the story. And there's a lot of good measure of tequila and mariachi thrown in, so it adds to the flavor, no pun intended. It was a wonderful, I think, exploration of what is happening in our world today in India, around this kind of malaise and this lackadaisical sort of resignation to institution and relationships and like what works and what doesn't work and what's right and wrong and all that. So it explores that in a very delicate way in the framework of a comedy. So it is a sort of a sex comedy in a way. So I think that's the beauty of it. Is like it's not just that people have to get together. Even unlike people can get together because they sort of complement or like are fascinated by the differences. So I think that goes to the rhetoric and the conversation that's happening world over now, around conflicts and wars and all this. It's just a simple thing around one subsect of a religion not agreeing to another subsect, or one religious book not subscribing to the beliefs of another book, or like one language, another language, even in microcosms within India, or in the Middle East or in Europe, this conversation is a larger conversation. It's not just the conversation that can be trivialized with the sex comedy that is fun to watch, but there's a larger commentary around it. It's like, hey, we're all different and we can find our differences and celebrate it. Doesn't mean you have to subscribe to it or like change. You could incorporate it and just kind of live and let live, and like have harmony, find a mid place for that. So that was a wonderful thing. We shot it in San Francisco and in Bombay. So I did a schedule in San Francisco with Sandeep, and there's a team from FTII who had come to do the sound design and the cinematography as well. And then we came back to Bombay after a couple of weeks break. I was coming to shoot something else in India, so we kind of piggybacked them so I could do them back to back. And the San Francisco part was a lot of fun. We shot in the city. The city, San Francisco, has so much character. It's just like New York. It's like, I like to call these cities compressed karma. It's like everybody's right there and everything is right there, and like you never know what's going to happen next, good and bad. So it's like there's never a dull moment in these cities. So graffiti changing on the walls every day. You never know like who's doing all this beautiful art. And suddenly you'll see Che Guevara on the wall, and like suddenly you see Ganesha on the wall. In fact, in the film there's a reference to that. The character actually bows to Vinayaka, who's been graffitied on the wall. In his naivety, he thinks it's just a sort of a mural that's religious. So there's like a lot of humor in the film. There's a lot of kind of exploration around intercultural romance and like what that means in terms of what love is, what I guess institutions are, marriage and all this, family and all this. So and I got to sing Para Bailar La Bamba, and I'm saying it in the Mexican accent, but that's how it's sung. So it was a blast to do that. You may have heard about it. It's actually one of the more successfully Wishberry funded films. It's called Punya Koti. It's a Sanskrit animated feature film. It's actually the first animated Sanskrit feature film. It's actually based on a poem called Punya Koti, or it's also called the Cow's Song. Govina Hadu is the Kannada interpretation, the version of that translation. It's something we study in schools. I studied in school. I did schooling in Bangalore also for a bit. So we had studied that in school, and I was familiar with it. But it's been done in Sanskrit, not very heavy Sanskrit, very colloquial Sanskrit that most people who understand Hindi or Devanagari, understanding will know what's being said. And it's also very sparsely populated across the film, where it's very animation heavy. It's intended for kids and also the kid in us for adults. It's very, very beautiful animation, very ultra modern kind of palette and colors and like design. We've had the very good fortune of having Revati ma'am do the Punya Koti's voice. So we got to work with Revati ma'am, and Ilayaraja sir is doing music for it. So I think we're going to have a wonderful kind of piece that comes out of this. The animation is still happening. It's very tech heavy, as you know. Animation is always very, very post tech heavy. So they're doing all the animation stuff right now, and it's in process. So I may go back and do some more dubbing or corrections for things that they've changed. But for the most part, my stuff has been done. I play the character of Kalinga, who's Punya Koti's cowherd, the master. So I have my own animation character now. I've been very fortunate and blessed because this kind of hit me the other day. I was actually in a theater in Bangalore, I think, or maybe actually Chennai, and I was just looking through the show list of like the films, and I saw The Man Who Knew Infinity and I saw U-Turn, all in the same list. I'm like, that's what I want to do, because I'm in both films and I've worked in both films. They're completely different films. One is a Hollywood film written by a Westerner, directed by a Western director, an American director, shot in India. The other one is an Indian film shot by this brilliant director Pawan, who has a very beautiful cinematic eye and storytelling style, completely shot in Bangalore. So I'm like, that juxtaposition hit me. I'm like, this is what I want to do. So I don't want to limit myself to language or country or anything like that. So my thing is, I want to tell good stories. If I can be a part of telling good stories wherever they happen, whether it's Europe or America or India or anywhere, I will go be part of that. So in terms of films that have been happening, Man Who Knew Infinity is in theaters still. I actually played a cameo in the film. Had the great experience of working with Arundhati Nag, who plays Ramanujam's mom. So I play Ramanujam's friend. Matthew Brown, who's now a good friend in Los Angeles, at the time, which is about 2.5 years ago, before the film was made, I got involved in the project in the development phase, where I used to workshop the script for Matthew, and I'd perform it for him as Ramanujam in a full triplicane, Tamil Iyengar accent, and he'd listen to it and he'd say, okay, that sounds right, that doesn't sound right. And he'd also ask me for a lot of cultural feedback, because I'm also from the community, from the Iyengar community, and so my father is from Triplicane near Pathasarthi Kovil, and so Ramanujam used to live there actually. That's why I'm referring to that. In his later years, he lived in Triplicane near Pathasarthi Kovil. And so we used to do that kind of iteration of going back and forth, and he went back and rewrote the script and brought it back. So I was involved in that phase, which was very, very wonderful and organic to do. And so Matthew said, dude, you have to do a role. And we were like, okay, what is meaningful for posterity? And say, okay, I'll do a cameo. So he said, let's have you do the scribe, who writes all the letters between Ramanujam and his wife, because in a very cinematic way, in a literary way, for me it feels very satisfying, because these letters are like the kind of remnants of that time. These letters are still available, you can actually read them. And I'm like, okay, that'd be wonderful to be the person who actually wrote those letters, So that's why I ended up doing that cameo in the film. And it was wonderful because it has a stellar cast, Jeremy Irons and Stephen Fry and Jeremy Northam, who I've worked with in Los Angeles in a different TV show with, and Dev Patel and Arundhati Nag and all these wonderful actors. So it was a total blast. So that's one film that's running. I have another film that released called Hot Bot. It's a completely sophomoric, comedy, sex comedy. So very, very different genre. That's on Netflix now. I finished another film with Prakash Jha's associate in Los Angeles. It's a genre called mumblecore. I think we've talked about this before, and you know the genre. For somebody who doesn't know, it's along the lines of Sideways. It's like a talking film, relationship development between characters who are on a journey. Typically in a car or a train or whatever. It's a beautiful, it reminds me of, also Balachandra sir's Rail Sneham. So, it's one of the beautiful serials he did, which is kind of, he was so ahead of his time. But it reminds me of that because so Mumblecore is that. And so we shot this on an actual literal road trip between San Francisco and Los Angeles. It's a film called 417 Miles, which is the distance between San Francisco and Los Angeles. So we shot this over a period of 7 days, which is the core part of the film, the travel part. We did a lot of other stuff which was location based separately, but we did about 5 days of traveling between San Francisco and Los Angeles, stopping to obviously eat and all that, but developing the story as it came along the way. So it was a wonderful experimental kind of film. It's going to hit the festival circuit soon. Punyakoti is going to come out later this year. This is the Sanskrit film I was talking about. There's a couple of projects that I'm attached to that should be announced soon in the next month or so. A film in Tamil, a film in Marathi, and a film in Hindi. So fingers crossed, whichever starts first, I will do that first. At the origin of it happened by chance. It was happenstance. I just got offered this project, which was just hard to refuse. So I'll share it with your viewers who are curious. It's called The History of Hindu India. It's a very secular series of documentary. It's a secular documentary series. We've already shot 3 parts of it. There's 2 more parts that are going to be shot in July. So I'm going to be here for that, to shoot that. I ended up producing it because the first part we shot in Chennai. And my family happens to have owned a temple in the past which we have access to, and we don't need permissions and stuff. So we were shooting this in a temple, not in a religious way, but the cultural and philosophical and esoteric aspects were explored. So we had to have a space that was a sort of a religious space without any imagery around religion, and talk about the Vedas and the Vedic literature and like what it means, because they're very scientific actually. If you look at the core of it, they're very scientific, the yagnas and yagas that are done. So this is what the documentary explored, is the history of Hindu India, in the sense that what is the culture and rhetoric and sociology that happened in the prehistoric, in kind of like the Indus Valley civilization time, fast forward to like the pre-colonial time and the British rule, and then post-British rule, and now. So these are the different parts of the documentary pretty much that are being explored in the different parts. And I've also done a very separate standalone documentary on Indian dance, on Bharatanatyam. So that's something that is in post right now in Los Angeles, and I helped produce it, I narrated it, and also this entire documentary series I narrate as well. So, and this is available free of cost for anybody who's interested on YouTube. So if you just type Hindu on YouTube, that's the first thing that will pop up. And we've gotten about 1.5 million views on YouTube, which is, I think, pretty good for a documentary that's been commissioned by a non-profit organization. The Oberoi Foundation commissioned it, and it was with the goal of creating some material that was secular for the school system. So in California, in the US actually at large, it's now become the source material around Hindu culture that teachers are using. And also across the world, like I think Malaysia and Singapore are using it as classwork material as well. So, so that's the documentary series.